You know what? Mistake over something way less serious but somehow equally stupid. You know Kim Jong-un, right? Supreme leader, haircut that replaces the entire population. And kids are banging pots and pans to keep sparrows from landing until they literally fall out of the sky from exhaustion. Millions of sparrows die. And here's where the ecology lesson kicks in, because it turns out sparrows don't just eat grain, they eat locusts. A lot of locusts. And with the sparrows gone, the locust population explodes. They swarm across the countryside, eating everything. Crops fail, famine sets in, and tens of millions of people die. All thanks to Mao skipping that ecology class. And did nobody stop to ask, hey Mao, don't you know sparrows eat that shit up? Either they German forces got within sight of the Kremlin, but were pushed back by a surprise Soviet counterattack. By the end of 1941, Germany had lost over 800,000 soldiers. Stalin was caught off guard despite warnings. His own mistake. But Hitler's mistake was thinking he could do what Napoleon couldn't, and doing it with worse timing. He took direct control of the army, but just made things worse. The Soviet Union started pushing west, retaking land, and eventually gaining control of huge parts of Eastern Europe. More people died on the Eastern Front than in all other battles of World War II combined. Pacific, Western Europe, North Africa, everything. We're talking 30 million dead, minimum. What started as a plan to defeat the Soviet Union ended up creating the Eastern Bloc and setting the stage for the Cold War because two men blundered. Going to D-Day on June 6, 1944, the Allies are hitting Normandy, and this should have been an easy win because the Germans had fortified the coast with panzer divisions ready and Rommel, who was actually competent. But Hitler was sleeping. No, literally, the German high command was terrified of waking him up. The initial reports come in, and everyone was afraid to make decisions without the Führer's approval. By the time Hitler rolled out of bed and gave the order to move the tanks, the beaches were already lost to the Allies. Defending the wrong place is basically a hobby at this point, like these two impregnable defenses. France, after World War I, decides never again. They built this massive Maginot Line of fortifications along the German border. Bunkers, tunnels, gun emplacements, the whole fleet. It ran from Switzerland to Luxembourg. But notice anything missing? Belgium. The French assumed Germans would respect Belgian neutrality like they did in 1914, or that the Ardennes forest was too dense and difficult for a large mechanized army to push through quickly. Then, in 1940, Germany invades through, you guessed it, Belgium. Through the Ardennes, around the Maginot Line entirely. The French army, expecting a repeat of trench warfare, gets outmaneuvered and outpaced. 6 weeks later, France falls. The Maginot Line itself barely saw combat. The defenses held where they were attacked, but they were irrelevant because they were facing the wrong direction. Their dumbasses and